Hello, everybody. Week 2 in CE165. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So this is a pretty big class tonight. I'm glad to see that. Thank you guys for all showing up. Thank you, Chef Ryan, for being here, and we have our elite representative as well, Mark. That's here. So thank you for joining us, Mark. Mark has many hats, believe it or not. One is, and I hope you'll see Mark a lot in the next block in the C155. He's actually by trade an architect, and then just because he thought he was going to do something else, he was actually a sales rep for a produce company too. So very, very relevant to what we're doing this turnaround. Okay, so very a lot of good stuff, guys. Okay, I'm going to mute you guys. So please, if you want to add some comments along the way, please just unmute yourself and kick in. Okay, just so we don't have too much background noise. Okay, so this week, the reading material for this week and the learning objectives for this week is basically inventory management, okay? That's actually it's a very, very important part of, that you gotta always keep track of, right? So all this stuff, all the goods that you have in, you gotta keep track of that. Right, you're probably monthly going to do an inventory as well. You always have to keep track of the food. You have a rotating stock. You got to keep track of all your chemicals, all your food, your perishable, your canned goods, your paper goods, glasses, equipment. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to keep track of, right? So, of course, the best thing to do is make a whole bunch of lists, okay? Now, once you have a list, the list is only as good as the last version, right? So you got to update your list to make sure that, it's okay to start out with a list that's not complete. Every time you notice something missing, write it on there, okay? Add it to your list. So this is obviously one of those points where using spreadsheets is the way to go, right? So if you have any questions about spreadsheets, just ask Amelia. She is the spreadsheet queen of CE165. All right? And if not, hey, you can always give Chef Ryan or myself a try, but we're not nearly as good. I can tell you that.
No.
So you'll so keep that in mind, okay, guys? Mark just put a price list in the chat forum there. I strongly recommend that you copy that link and have that available. It is some really, really cool stuff on there. Okay, so we're always looking for prices. So keep those. Okay, keep those attached there. So basically, the beginning is how much to stock. Now, when you have no hindsight, that means this is day one, right? This is the order that you're ordering in 3 days before you open the door. The first delivery. How much are you going to order? It's very, very hard to do, guys. Okay? So it is true that at that point, we do have a tendency to over-order on the first, but it's not going to take you all that long to figure out what's called the par stock, right? Sort of like what do you need to have to operate. It won't take you all that long to figure out what that is, okay? But it doesn't happen overnight, right? You gotta be up and running a little bit before that, before you figure that out. So when you first start your restaurant, you won't have a great idea of how much inventory you need, okay? However, there are two schools of thought on whether to overstock or understock, all right? So, guys, I want you guys to participate on this one. So, overstocking what is the advantage of overstocking? There's only one. What is it, Janice?
You won't run out.
You won't run out. That is correct. Now, there is a byproduct of not running out, okay? Because let's say you have your menu. If you run out of one of your very, let's say, popular items on your menu, that means that normally now you're going to end up selling more of other things, okay? Which you can predict a big seller, right? A big seller means you're going to sell a bunch of them, so I prep a lot. When you have that prep done and you run out, now you're going to dig into the prep for a lot of other things. Basically, ultimately what it means is that next day, instead of just prepping, you know, restocking for that one thing you ran out of, now you're going to run out of ingredients for a lot of other things. So now your prep is going to be exponentially larger. That's the thing that most people don't think about. But if you run out of one ingredient, that means you're going to sell more of others. That means you're going to hit that mise en place, right? And then all of a sudden the next day, you're actually going to end up having to do a lot more work. So think of that as well as a byproduct. Running out is good. That means you're not losing money. There's no waste. It's all good. However, you are probably going to end up doing more prep than the following day. All right. So understock, what's the advantage of that then? There's more. I'm not saying they're better and one outweighs the other one, because of course the perfect is to never run out and never have too much. But that's as easy as walking on water, right? That doesn't happen so often, okay? So what's the advantage, let's say, of understocking? I gave you a couple of hints. Well, if you understock, then nothing's going to go bad, right? So you don't waste anything because nothing goes bad. That is a clear advantage, right? Second advantage is if you have $10,000 worth of stock, inventory stuff, right? But you only need 5, that means you have $5,000 that is tied up somewhere instead of being available on your bank account, right? That's not a big advantage either, right? There's only very few things that are worth buying now because they're going to gain value, but a ribeye in your fridge that you buy on Monday is not going to be worth more money on Friday, right? However, if you have extra cash, you might want to buy some cases of wine and keep them 2-3 years, because a bottle of wine will usually double in value in a certain price point in 3 years. Like if you buy a $15 bottle of wine, chances are 3 years down the road, it's worth at least 30. In that case, you made money, right? You invested money. Does that make sense? Because no other money will double in 3 years. You know that. You've all had a savings account, right? You don't put $1 in today and in 3 years you find 2, right? So therefore, there are very, very few things where that's attracted to overstock. So understocking has its advantages. Overstocking has the advantage you don't run out, but you might waste product. Okay. Now there's another little thing to this one that most people have a tendency to fall for, and that is to get a really good deal on a large amount of a product, right? Well, what happens? Let's say all of a sudden I get a killer deal on beef short ribs, right? But I got to buy 50 pounds of it. So now that I got all this beef short rib, right? Now I got to cook it and I got to sell it. Well, if I sell a lot of beef short ribs, I might not sell the salmon I have in my fridge, right? So now I have a risk of my salmon not making it, it might expire before it goes in. So therefore, there's a very tight balance to find in your menu as in terms of what is a good deal that doesn't hurt other things on your menu, right? Now, this might sound a little bit complex, but really what it is you don't want to compete with yourself. Does that make sense? Because once a customer comes in the door, you want them to be happy, but you want to do this because it's a financial benefit for you, right? So this is what you got to think about too. So buying big bulk items might sound good, but think twice before you really, really, really do it, because it could hurt sales of something else, right? Okay, so this is the idea about overstocking, understocking, okay? Now, once you have a better idea of the weekly inventory needs, you should avoid overstocking for a few reasons, okay? Tie up capital, as we said. Another thing is that if you have a lot of groceries in your walk-in, your staff will probably have a tendency to over-portion That means they use too much. That means the recipes that we're talking, that you're going to be your assignment today and next week, people will use too much product. That means your food cost goes up. That's a tendency to, if you have plenty of something, you don't stretch, right? You don't make it last. If you don't make it last, ultimately, you're increasing your food cost, right? The amount of money that it costs you to buy the food in your plate. So a large inventory, of course, is as well much harder to track and keep track of, right? Why do we always keep track of our inventory? Why do we want to know what we have?
To know what we earn.
To know what we earn is one of them, but primarily we need to know what we have in order to decide how much to order, right?
Yeah.
So we don't order, if you already have 3 cases of beans, we're not going to order one more case because we already got 3, right? So we don't want to order more than we need. We want as well to keep track of what we got, right? What can happen to ribeyes on a Friday night if an employee has a backpack?
They can be stolen.
It can very well shrink, right? That's what we call shrinkage, right? So you got to be careful about having large inventories, right? Because it's true that if you have, if you open your fridge and it's all full, right? It's easy to overcook a meal. It's not hard, right? We're going to cook this and cook this and cook this, and it's all so much fun. And then at the end of the night, we're going to have a garbage can we can't lift because there's too much food in it. That's not a good deal, right? Okay. So another thing is, what happens if you have a technical problem? What if your walk-in or refrigeration breaks? You know, on a Friday night, if you leave on a Friday night and you didn't realize that your freezer broke, when you come back Saturday morning, that freezer, everything in it is gone because it's 45 degrees, 50 degrees in there, and it is not a pretty sight. And everything has started to leak and melt, right? So at that point, yeah, you can call your insurance company and make an insurance claim, but you know what? I can tell you what your premium is going to increase is not worth the money that went in food that went bad, right? So between you and I, you know, just the 2 of us, right? Even though there's 14 of us here, right? If you had $5 grand in your freezer, and trust me, it can happen pretty quick, right? You throw a couple of ribeyes in there at $150 a piece, you know, $1,000 happens pretty quick. If you were to right now say I lost $3 grand, would that hurt? Pretty sure, right? If you just lost $3 grand out of your piggy bank and it's gone, that would suck, right? So that's why you're always going to make sure that you don't have too much tied up. Because truthfully, yes, we have insurance policies for this, but very, very seldomly is it worth restoring or getting money back through an insurance claim because your premiums are going to go up. It's just the way it goes, right? Insurance companies are not in there to lose money. You guys know that, right? So paying for anything through an insurance company is always the last solution, right? So, of course, any spoilage that you have is going to hurt you tremendously, many fold, okay? We're going to talk about that later on in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about how much it actually hurts when something goes bad or something gets stolen, okay? So in order to manage your inventory, and this is a fairly important little note that I'm giving you now because you're going to use that later on when you end up in the entrepreneurship class, okay? So the recommended inventory size, okay? Let's say now you've figured out that what you need is every week you need 100 pounds of ground beef, okay? Then you're going to ask yourself, well, how much should I order? So the answer to that is always 1.1, okay? So you multiply the 100, multiply by 1.1, and it'll give you 110 pounds. It gives you 10 pounds more, or 10%, more than what you need, all right? That extra 10 pound is in case stuff happens and things go well, or somebody messes up a burger here and there, or something happens, whatever, maybe a tour bus steps by and you need another 30 burgers, that's what that is for, Okay, so the perfect inventory to have is what you need plus 10%. Okay, so if I say I need 100 pounds of ground beef to do the week, I order 1.1, right, 110 pounds. If I have now 2 deliveries a week, I'm going to need 55 pounds per delivery. That makes sense? If I had 3 deliveries, right, I would take the 110 and divide it by 3. Do 36 pounds. Does that make sense? So basically what you're doing there is you're minimizing your inventory, which free out capital that you can keep on your bank account, have it available for emergencies. You never know what happens, right? Or should your refrigerator go bad, it's better to throw out 55 pounds of meat than 110. That makes sense? So then you cut your losses tremendously. Plus, and here's another kicker is it takes a lot more room to store twice as much food than you need. And not everybody can afford to pay rent on a large storage unit, plus a large freezer and a large fridge and all that stuff. Especially not if you think that, you know, a lot of real estate like this or commercial buildings are about $25 per square foot rent per year, right? So if you had a 500 square foot storage facility, multiply 500 by 25, right? What is that? $12,500? Is that what it is? That's a lot of money to pay in rent for a large storage space that ultimately doesn't generate any income. Okay, so always keep that in mind. Okay, so remember that 1.1. You're gonna, whenever you talk about inventory, how much you need, 1.1. Okay, what you need plus 10%. You're good on that? Excellent. All right, guys. So what we're going to talk about when we talk about inventory, it's really about how you keep record on it. Okay, how do you track it, right? So we have 7 areas where we can track, and it's kind of this check and balance system that we want to have about our inventory. Because inventory, even though it's product, inventory is money, right? A tomato equals a dollar amount. So everything in your inventory equals money. If you lose inventory, you lose money. Okay? If something goes spoiled, you lose money. So you want to keep a good track on that. Okay? So the first place, of course, to keep track of your purchasing is, the first area to keep your records is in your purchasing. All right? Is when you buy the product. Okay? So you should obviously work out ahead of time how much to order based on your knowledge, which will come, and I guarantee you, pretty quickly. Okay, and how much you use of perishables and non-perishable items. Of course, the non-perishable items, paper goods, the chemicals, and all that stuff, is a lot less of a worry. Perishable items is obviously always what you're gonna keep an eye on, right? Basically, we sell Nikes, except our problem is that our sneakers go bad in 7 days, right? So when the stuff comes in, it needs back out. Otherwise, they go in the trash can, right? So always keep that in mind. Okay. You should get a specific, consistent product from your vendors. For instance, it is simply ordering a steak. You should always determine or explain how you want the steaks. If you want them pre-cut, right? So then you should tell them how thick you want them, how much you want them to weigh, if you want them trimmed, not trimmed, lip on, lip off, etc., when it comes to steaks. Or if you want to buy them by the whole, like the prime ribs, right? The whole loin. Right, in that case, you can ask for them. You can ask for the size of them, right? If you want to make small steaks but fat, then you need small ribeyes. If you want just do prime rib, then you can order bigger ones, and they're usually less per pound than the smaller ones, right? And then you can ask them to have them trimmed, lip on. You know, that's when you have your meat, and then there's that little fat thing sticking out, right? You can ask them to have the lip on or the lip off. If you take them off, of course, price per pound goes up. All right. Now, another area to keep, and this is the second area to keep track of your, or keep records, is when you receive, okay? So the first step was ordering. I called up my sales rep and I said, I have a long list of what I ordered, okay? I have that order list in my hand. Now I'm receiving the products and it comes with a receipt, with a slip, the delivery slip, right? On that delivery slip, of course, that should be the same thing as what I have ordered. There shouldn't be much discrepancy there, right? If I order a case of 50 pounds of prime rib, I don't want the guy that comes and delivers a prime rib to bring me 150 pounds, right? That makes sense, right? So I want to make sure that what gets delivered is what I ordered. I want to make sure that what get delivered, that the prices are the same as when I ordered. I don't want things to become more expensive or when I receive them, right? So that's when on the receiving end, I need to check that. I need to open up all the boxes to see if the content is in good shape. Any case that comes with canned goods, for example, if there's a can that's nicked, I should refuse it and send it back, right? Because the health inspection, if you come in and you have a dented can, you're actually going to be written up and you can get a fine from the health department for that, because there can be issues happening inside the coating of the can. All right, so dented cans are worthless. You should refuse them. Let's say you're ordering up a lot of chives and parsley and whatever. Cilantro is a terrible, notorious one for this. And then all of a sudden in the bag, the fine herbs are wet because they've gotten cold, right? You should refuse that at that point. This is the time where the driver can take it off the receipt and take it off the bill, so you don't have off your invoice. All right. So very important to check and make sure that what you got is what you got. I don't have to tell you that if you get fish in that's not fresh and you plan on keeping it 4 days, if it's not fresh when you get it in 4 days, it's not going to be any better, right? There is not enough makeup to put on that pig to make that any good in 4 days. You can all imagine that, right? So always keep that in mind. Always, always, always. Okay? So now we talked about ordering and we've talked about receiving. Okay? A place, and the thing to know is that when you receive your deliveries, okay, you need to have somebody available to put them away. This is very important because as much as the delivery or the company you buy it for is responsible for the integrity of the product when they bring it, once they're gone and you have received the product, at this point it is a lot harder to fight the case if something is not up to par. Because the delivery guy that's there, he can visually see if this fish smells bad and it doesn't look good, he can visually see and approve, and he's a representative of the company. You don't have anything you need to fight and argue with a sales rep about or on the phone afterwards. And not only that, but the sooner you know if there's a problem with a product, the sooner you can call some other source and say, hey, they screwed me on that delivery. Can you help me out? Does that make sense? So you can't fix a problem until you know it's there. Receiving is the best time to do that. All right. This is why if you have a restaurant, I personally do not receive any food from 11 to 1:30. I will not receive a delivery because I can't take somebody off the line that's generating revenue for my restaurant just because, you know, the food truck didn't get here on time. I'm not blaming the driver nor the company. You know, they suffer from traffic and breakdowns just like you and I do, but I just can't receive it at that time. They have to accommodate to bring it to me at the right time. Of course, if they have to bring it and it's that, or you don't get your delivery and it's Friday and you need this food to do your service tonight, or you're simply not going to be open, well, in that case, you know, you got to swallow your pride. You're going to take it. But I would most certainly pull that conversation up with the sales rep and say, this can't happen again, or you know, or if it happens, then you better have a damn good reason for it. You know, I know that in the city this seldomly happens. If you're in a rural area where, like for example, where my business was at, it's 6 hours away from Denver, and the truck leaves from Denver. I was delivered from Denver on a Cisco truck, and the guy drove 6 hours before he even got to my place. and he had other drops. And the Cisco truck has a timer on it, and at 12 hours that truck shuts down, and he can't physically move the truck. It doesn't want to move. So if he's by the side of the road somewhere, well, he can't do anything about it, and I can't either. So I have taken my own car, driven down the street to pick up food out the back of a truck because I needed it, right? But those are it doesn't happen very often. A couple of times in 7 years, I wouldn't blame the company for not trying. Okay? But very, very important. So receiving, remember, that's on you guys, right? That's you double checking, okay? Now, the next is, of course, storage. There's no doubt that how you store your product will determine how long it lasts, how fresh it is, how good it's going to look, how good it's going to taste, et cetera, and how compliant you are with the law. Okay? So, so in the storage area, and as Chef Ryan just put in there, the FIFO, right? First in, first out. You guys have all, I know, been in a supermarket once in your life, gone over to the milk section and opened the door, right? You have probably, if you go there every single time, you will notice that there can be 3 days difference on the expiration date on a jug of milk, one right next to the other, right? I was in the supermarket yesterday. They had one that expired on the 24th and one that expired on the 27th. If you don't look and you take the 24, shame on you, right? So this is the same thing, right? You got to keep an eye on all that stuff. So this is the first in and first out method, right? So so have a neat and organized storing space so that it is easy to keep track of inventory. Rotate inventory on the first in, first out, or the FIFO principle. Older inventory should be used before newer inventories. Label and date all products that comes in with painter's tape or mask tape. That works pretty well. And then use your Sharpie, right, for that. I'm sure you guys are already doing that in your cooking classes, right? Cooking and baking classes, you're already doing that, right? Students up on the Boulder campus, same thing. It is mandatory that in their little pocket that they have a Sharpie for that same bowl reason, okay? And of course, it's always good to put your initials on it. Sometimes, if you're not quite sure, you ask whoever put it in there. They'll say, oh yeah, well, it's the this finesse and this and that, right? It is mandatory to put labels on stuff if they're not in the original container, unless the content is obvious, all right? So if you're poaching a lobster, you do not need to put on a label that it is a lobster, because nothing looks like one. But you do have to put on the day when you cooked it, all right? But keep that in mind. So you have to label things that could be mistaken, okay? And but you do not have to label things that are obviously utterly obvious, okay? So always keep in mind, of course, how you store your dry goods, right? That should be at a cool room temperature, preferably. It is not always good to have a dry storage that freezes, right? If you do have chocolate in there, just as well as chocolate doesn't like to be too hot, it doesn't like to be too cold either, right? This is for anybody that's doing baking. Not a cool thing. You get some frozen chocolate. It's nice and white, right? It has lost its shine completely. So, of course, you store meats and dairies at 44 to 46. Store fish and seafood at 30 to 34, all right? Frozen food should be between 0 and 10. And a little note is as well, obviously, to increase your storage, your shelf life would be to do vacuum seal, right? Vacuum packing. I will just tell you that there are rules and regulations about that. And if you have a vacuum pack machine and you want to get really crazy with them, you will have to apply for a HACCP plan, all right? Because it's once you do a vacuum pack, basically you're changing the atmospheric conditioning of the product. And when you do that, you go into a whole other realm of things that can happen in that. And it's the same problems that you have if you do canned goods, et cetera, okay? So Vacuum sealers are really cool. They allow you to do lots and lots of cool, fun stuff. But very often there are some more steps that you have to do. And a HACCP plan is not impossible to file for, but you gotta, it's another step of filling out paperwork and do all sorts of steps, and there's some investment that needs to go into it. And then you file these steps with the health department, and they give you approval to do these things. Okay, so cool things, but not always super easy. Are you guys aware that if you buy a individually quick frozen fish, for example, tuna, salmon, whatever, right? You guys know that you cannot thaw it out in the bag other than the thawing process. If you put this bag under running water, submerged under running water, in the bag, it's fine. As soon as it's thawed out, you have to open up the bag and get the fish out. You cannot leave it in the vacuum bag, right? So keep that in mind, okay? Most people have a tendency to just thaw them in the bag and say, well, they're already in the bag, so they're not leaking. That's cool, but that is against the health department, okay? So I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't so, but it is, all right? So this is area number 4, and this is issuing, okay? This is basically taking food out of your walk-in, out of your freezer, out of your storage, right? This is for you to get produce so you can start cooking finally with all this stuff, right? So it is keeping track of what goes back out. Now, for the most part, I'd say most restaurants do not keep a very, very tight track of this. However, if you work in any food establishment that has more than one point of sale, that means, for example, if you're in a hotel, for example, you have a restaurant, you have banquets, you got catering, you got room service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even the purchaser usually at a hotel as well buy the soap, the paper goods for their office, all those things, right? Well, they're not going to let anything go out of their inventory unless somebody marks it, signs for it, and this is allocated to their restaurant or their part of the establishment. It's to know where stuff goes, all right? So that's the issuing part of it. Then, of course, you have the preparation. You guys might know a thing or two about that, right? So this is exactly what we're going to talk about today and tomorrow, the assignment this week and next week, right? It is to do a standardized recipe. That is, once you do a standardized recipe, stick to it. If you don't stick to it, it serves no purpose to spend time making them, right? If you don't make a standardized recipe, you can't control your cost on your food, okay? So the preparation, it is very important to do so, all right? And I am absolutely 110% convinced that a big part of restaurant that fails is because the chefs or the owners or both have no idea about standardized recipes. And I say this because I guarantee you there's at least 1 or 2 students in your class that's working in the industry in a kitchen where nobody has ever given them a recipe. They have shown them how to make it, and they have never, ever, ever told them how much cream do you put in there, how much fish stock do you put in there, how much butter do you need, how much cheese do you do, right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you know what? I can tell you that an extra slice of cheese on your cheeseburgers in your restaurant could very well cost you almost 1% in food cost. So if your recipe says you want 1 slice of cheese on your cheeseburgers, but everybody in the kitchen puts on 2 because they like cheese, I agree that it makes for a delicious cheeseburger, but the problem is that your food cost just goes up by 1%. 1% is huge, guys, right? We're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, okay? So 1 slice of cheese might only be 17 cents, but if it's enough of them, right, then it becomes a lot, right? So always keep that in mind. I cannot emphasize on this enough. Recipes, guys, recipes. Mark, my friend. I know now. I have recollections. You started to work at a place where there were no standardized recipes, right? The chef sort of knew his stuff.
basically, yeah. And the cook knows the recipe. And when you talk about the portion, they have portions. So basically, we cook everything. After that, the portion is the container, different size of container. For the fish, the meat, everything, we have ounces in place. So we have one person for the fish, for example, who's coming every day in a restaurant and do the prep for the fish with the cutting and everything. Everything is in place in this. The thing that we don't really measure is the side dish that we used. Usually the veggies are not. We don't really weight it. It's the portions of each plate.
Yeah.
Because it's like we said in France, it's valeur négligeable. So
Yeah.
it's
Measurable value. However, we've had this conversation before. I strongly disagree with that.
Oh, yeah. I know.
How about you, Chef Ryan? Do you have some experiences of cooking with or without standardized recipes?
Well, when I first started doing like private chefing, like going to people's homes and cooking for them, I was expected to bring all of my produce. And when I first got started, I was just bringing whatever, because I was like, how important can it be? And then for the first like month and a half, I was operating at a loss because I wasn't keeping an eye on what I was making. Learned that lesson really, really fast, and started like writing out my own recipes and following them to the letter in order to make sure that I was churning enough.
Yeah, absolutely right. Anybody else here has some experience working with or without standardized recipes? No? So I can tell you how I was introduced to standardized recipes. So, many, many years ago, I worked in Cannes in France, where they had the film festival. So it's a big convention center. And we had a dining room where you can sit 1,200 people, right? Well, you can very well imagine that when you're cooking for 1,200 people, your guesstimating is not going to fly, right? You got to make sure that you have sauce for customer 1,199 and 1,200, right? If they don't get a ladle of sauce on their beef, you're in trouble, right? So that's exactly how it was done. And so we made recipes, if you take a recipe for 12, you multiply that recipe by 10 to make it for 120, I guarantee you that you will probably be able to serve 124, 125, 126 people out of it. It always happens like that. Now, this place was very, 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 I wouldn't say tight, but we didn't want to cook for another 100 people either, for that matter, right? Because otherwise, we were on salary, so the sooner we got done, the sooner we went home, right? So we didn't want to cook for another 100 people either if we didn't have to. So I can tell you, we got those nailed down. When we had a party for 1,200 people, we did not have enough food to feed 1,220 people. And that was an experience in managing food costs that I will never forget. The executive chef that was there, believe it or not, was not a very good cook. He used to be the executive chef at the airport in Nice, which is the second largest passenger airport in France. He used to be the executive chef for the catering company that made meals for the airplanes. So I can tell you that the lessons that I learned in costing recipes and in making recipes was extremely interesting. To the point where it was the extreme, but then from there, it makes everything easier, right? You can always slack a little bit, but it was a really, really nice learning experience. So I appreciated doing that tremendously. And now I'll tell you, maybe I'm a lazy bone, I don't know, but I don't like to cook more food than I have to either, because it's just more work. If I'm already working 60, 70 hours a week, if I can cut 4 hours because I don't have to cook extra food, then now leftovers, right? Leftovers are great at home, but leftovers in a restaurant are not always that cool, because what you gonna do with them? That means now you have to transform it into something that, that somebody still wants to buy. Well, prime rib is good once, and it's good in a prime rib sandwich, but it gets a little old when you make it into a beef stew, right? And that's what you got to do, because you can't throw the darn thing out, right? So the less you have, the less you got to figure out what you do with it afterwards too. And that's just a lazy bone in me that dictates that one. Okay.
Yeah, but this is more in case in the catering business, because in the restaurant usually what you have in a walking, you use it only when you set it. So you will not cook something that you will not sell.
No,
so
that's for sure. But let's say if you have a bakery, for example, right? What are you going to do with the extra bread? I mean, you might have a friend that has chickens and a pig, and if I were your friend, I'd be thankful. But, what are you going to do with 100 croissants that you can't sell them tomorrow? People don't go to the bakery to buy old croissants, right? I was just in France, and the umbilical cord is still not quite cut from my pain au chocolat, okay? But nevertheless, I'm not going to go there and buy a day-old one, right? If I can't get a fresh one, it's worthless. And restaurant and bakeries, it's a little hard to make bread pudding every day, okay? Have you guys noticed the amount of bread puddings you see on menus now, left and right and everywhere? It's like the fab, right? Well, you know what? If somebody was better in doing the purchasing, they wouldn't have to make bread pudding to get rid of the old bread, and they could actually make some good desserts instead.
In our place, the bread become scrum bread when or it's finished in a tummy of the customer, or it's finished in a bread for the crumb bread.
Yeah, it becomes
Croutons.
yeah, croutons, all that stuff, and all that is great, right? But just remember that all that is taking more time, which means your payroll is going to go up. So you gotta be always careful with this stuff, because we're talking about food costs, but trust me, payroll is a completely different beast, and I'm actually very excited. In a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about that, and that's that. I'm as passionate about payroll as I am with food costs and standardized recipes. All right, so portioning, guys, this is a big thing. Okay, now if you end up always doing the same things, portioning becomes easier. But my biggest advice I can give you is if you make meatballs, okay, buy one of those ice cream scoops with a little thing in it, right? You push it and it goes boop. Okay, buy one that is exactly the size you need, not one where you need to take one and then add a little bit, right? Now you're not doing anything precise. Take one that will do exactly what you need. Same thing. If you make pasta with Alfredo sauce, for example, if you need 5 ounces of Alfredo sauce per portion, buy a 5-ounce ladle, not a 4-ounce and then take a little thing, or take a 6-ounce and then not quite pour all of it, because you're going to be off every single time. Now comes the kicker. I fired a guy once. Yes, this evil guy. I became a chef at a place. There was this guy that was cutting steak, and he'd been working there for a while, and he was always cutting steaks, and they were always 12.00 ounces. Every single steak he cut was 12 ounces. I can tell you that I consider myself good, but I know there ain't nobody that good, okay? Well, what the darn guy wasn't paying attention is he was using one of those spring-loaded scales, right? He had it all the way against the back of the table, and the back had a backsplash. Every time that scale came down, it hit the back of the backsplash, and it said 12 ounce on the damn dial. He had been cutting 14, 15-ounce steaks every day for years. I mean, I'm not saying that you got to be smart to be a cook, but there is a certain standard that you gotta meet, and he just wasn't there. And the guy was so adamant about what he was doing that I couldn't make him change it. He refused. I mean, as silly as that, right? So I can tell you that you will get better. Perfection doesn't exist. All right? Now, here comes the thing, right? weight, fish, meat, whatever it is that we cook, right, is always raw weight. So a 12-ounce steak in the plate is not going to weigh 12 ounce because it's been cooked. It weighs 12 ounce before it gets on the grill. All right, so it'll shrink some. But but make sure that your steaks do not, exceed by a couple of, a half an ounce more or less. That's about as far as you can go. So, for example, if you guys are doing hamburgers, right, and chances are pretty darn big. If you ever work as a cook in a restaurant, you're going to make hamburgers. If you're a pastry chef, chocolatier, et cetera, you can pluck your ears because it's not a problem for you. But ground beef comes in a 10-pound roll. Okay, if you want to serve 1/3 pound hamburgers, then out of that roll of 10 pounds, you got to get 30 hamburgers. That's easy enough, right? 10 divided by a third becomes 30, right? So when you take this roll of ground beef and you cut it, if you end up with 29, well, then of course it's not terrible, but your hamburgers are a little bit too big. If you end up with 31, then your hamburgers are too small, but it's good for your bank account. I did not say that. 30 is what you want to be, right? But if you're gonna cut 90 hamburgers for the weekend, this is a very good way of doing it. It doesn't take much time, and actually, the fun thing is that the offset bread knives, the 9-inch offset bread knives, the ones where handle goes up like that. The width of that blade is exactly 1/3 of a pound hamburgers in a 10-pound roll burgers. I can tell you that because I've cut 10 millions of them. And it works out really, really good that way, So you find your ways of doing it. The same thing is, of course, if I have a prime rib and I know it weighs X amount of pounds, right? The same thing, I know how many ribeyes I'm supposed to get out of it. If I'm off, well, then I'm too big or my ribeyes are too big, or they're too small, or there was too much fat on them, in which case I got to tell my sales rep, hey, the lip on these ribeyes was way, way, way bigger than average, and I couldn't get my yield out of it. Does that make sense? So you keep track of it, right? Very, very simple, okay? So portioning, guys, that's the thing. A little bit goes a long way. So I talked about the slice of cheese, but the same thing, right? On the reading material this week, they talk about a half an ounce of ground beef on the hamburgers. Well, that's true that when you got half ounce, if you put a half ounce too many on each burger, and you cut 100 of them, at the end of the day, you spend 50, you use 50 ounces of hamburger. That's 3.5 pounds of meat. That's probably equal to $10, right? $10, that kind of sucks, right? Because that would have been, how much is 1/3 of 16? 5 and some, right? So this would have been basically 8 burgers that you could have cooked more out of this meat that you got, right? So basically, you cheated yourself out of the sale of 8 burgers, right? At $12 a piece, it's still money, right? $96. Are you guys with me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Good. Well, I can tell you that the success in a restaurant is in small amounts, but it's a lot of them. That makes sense. If you're straight on your burgers that you make every week, I guarantee you, at the end of the year, it'll make a big difference. I mean, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of difference, right? And you want that money in your pocket instead of the sales rep, right? That's sort of why you want to be an entrepreneur, is because you want the profit to go in your pocket, right? It's that simple, okay? And this is one of the steps to doing that. And then, of course, last but not least, and this one here, I have a lot of thoughts about this, and this is the order taking, right? This is the point of sale. This is when the sale become official in your record keeping piece of equipment, right? The Aloha, Microsoft, Square, whatever it is that you use for your point of sale, right? This is the machine. You type in the order, and then the printer goes crazy here and there and everywhere and tells what the waiter needs. Okay. Now, the point of sale, of course, is the check and balance. Whatever goes through that system should equal what came in, right? There shouldn't be a discrepancy. So, for example, right, if you've ordered 120 muffins and you sell 112 of them and you run out, well, that doesn't make much sense, does it? Except you're going to have one of your cooks in the back going, right? That means he cost you a sale, right? You can't do that unless you give it to them. Nobody should eat anything unless you give it to them, okay? This is super important. So one of the reasons why I'm a little sort of, once you get really, really good at knowing what's going on in your point of sale, you can really use that piece of equipment diligently for you to track if there's shrinkage anywhere, theft in some way or another, okay? You can track if employees are performing to average or if they're not, right? The point of sale gives you a whole ton of answers once you know what to look for. But it is a very, very good way of keeping track. Basically, whatever comes in, right, it's going to go through the point of sale to get back out. If it's not and it doesn't exist, it disappeared somewhere in shrinkage, waste, it got expired and turned bad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Another thing to always keep in mind, and this is obviously another place where food can go without going through the point of sale, and that would be staff meals, for example, right? So keep in mind that staff meals still have to be recorded because basically it's a tax write-off, it's an expense, okay? So don't just feed your staff food and then you know, at the end of the year, you pay a whole bunch of tax and you don't like doing that. So you got to have some write-offs, and staff meals is one of them, okay? Just like if you have anything that goes bad in your refrigerator, right? Don't just throw it out. Same thing. It's not up to par, it got bad, whatever. You got to keep track of it so you can use it as a write-off, okay? There's no reason for your business to incur this expense if it didn't generate revenue. Does that make sense? So always keep that in mind, okay? So that's always a good thing to do. Of course, you know that staff meals, right? You can use products that are getting towards the end of the life. Of course, you can never serve anybody anything that's not good, but it's most certainly a way to still get value and get some use out of a product that is starting to get to the point where it's going to be hard to sell to the customers for paying customer out front, okay? So what do you guys think about the areas of to keep record? There's a lot of them, isn't there? Okay. But do they make sense, however? They do, right? Order and receiving should be the same, right? Okay. Whatever goes out of your inventory, you should have a good idea about what's going on. Right? It makes sense, right? Of course, the portionings are crucial, right? So that you follow your standardized recipe, and then how people take the orders, right? Side note and personal experience, if you have a lot of friends that are, friends before they got hired or got friends during the time they worked with you, and one is in the front of the house and one is in the back of the house, this is a good time to keep an eye on what's going on sometimes, because, friend in the front of the house has a buddy coming in. He wants a ribeye, but the waiter puts in a POS system a hamburger. He goes back and tells the cook, hey, this is my friend. This hamburger here is actually a ribeye. The guy gets a ribeye, pays for a hamburger, and you're out $20. That makes sense? And those things are quite difficult to keep track of if you don't keep an eye on it. Same thing, a glass of wine, for example, right? You might have 3 different kinds of wine. One glass of wine is $4.50 and one is $8.50. They ring up the $4.50, they pour the $8.50, and you're in the whole $4. That makes sense? So those are the things to always keep track of. A lot of that stuff you can find out once you know where to look on the receipts, et cetera, et cetera. But it's always good to keep track of. I mean, basically, if you think of it, your inventory is money, right? So you have money stacked on shelves everywhere for everybody to use, right? If you think of it that way, it makes good sense to double track your accounts, right? I know this might sound a little bit paranoia, but it's a good thing to do. Okay, so that's my take on that one. Of course, there are other areas to of course keep record keeping, and that's your bank deposits, your charge slips, accounts payables, and all that stuff that can be audited, right, or should be audited. Okay, invoices, receipts, and check stubs must be kept to explain against discrepancies between purveyors or employees and the restaurant. Simple enough, right? Okay. Of course, always avoid waste. Did I probably didn't. One thing that I find very important, and this is actually something that if you're ever looking to get to be promoted within a job that you have within an establishment that you work in, it is very, very often, and this is one way that I, as an executive chef, check how well my staff is trying to keep close to food cost, is at the end of the night, I'll go over and I lift the trash can. If I can't lift the darn trash can off the floor, that means it's full, right? Everything that I receive in my restaurant costs money. So if I have, let's say, an invoice of $1,000, right, and I received 300 pounds of food, that means that average delivery was $3.33 per pound. Does that make sense? If I then at the end of the night go over and lift the trash can and it weighs 20 pounds, well, guess what? That trash can has $70 worth of something in it, right? Now, that might be okay, but if another employee consistently have a trash can that weighs 40 pounds, one every night is 20, one is 40, I'm going to go and think, well, maybe this guy is not being as careful as he should. Does that make sense? This is a very, very easy way. If you're in charge of a team, instead of going and looking at what they do all the time, because you can't check everything, you can't have your eyes everywhere and be in the office and do all the paperwork and keep recording and doing this and doing that, right? But one thing you do have time for is to go and lift the trash can, right? So if it's something that you do consistently, you will get a very good idea about what's going on. Okay. All right. Does that make sense? It's just one of those very easy things for you to do. If I have consistently the same guy at night, his trash can is too empty, and this has happened to me before, I've asked him, hey, how come this is in here? And the guy then tell me, well, the guy for lunch over prep, and when I come, the diced tomatoes and all that stuff is all mushy and it's nasty. So I toss them and then I have to redo them because they prep too much. It's not his fault, but it gives me the opportunity to rectify a problem. I need to know that there's a problem before I can rectify it. All right. So it's not a personal whatever. It is just in order to stay within budgets on expenses, et cetera, et cetera. It's one way that I have found that's very, very successful and doesn't take much effort. Okay. So avoid waste, right? Too much inventory has a tendency to people to overuse, right? Which leads to waste. Not a good thing to do either, okay? Over trimming, lack of standardized recipes, and all those nasty things. All right, guys, any questions on managing your inventory? That sounds pretty good. I know I was a little redundant on it, but it's a very, very important thing, and it's a mindset. You got to get the understanding and a mindset for it, and then it really does become second nature, really, really quite easily. Okay, so yep.
I will add only when they receive the goods, when they receive the delivery, to check everything point by point with the list. That they've got two advantages on that. First, you know exactly what you have, and you can by vision see what weight it is. And secondly, to verify if everything that you are on the list are here and in good condition, because till the guy is here, if something doesn't fit to your needs or doesn't fit on the quality, you can still send it back and it will not be kept on the invoice. So basically, till they bring it back the food, if you really need this, you will not pay for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned that earlier too, right? When we talked about the receiving of the produce, to keep a tight eye on that all the time. Okay. I'm sorry to cut you off, Mark, but we're kind of short of time, and we still have the assignment to talk about. Yeah, Diana?
Yeah, thanks. I do have a question about the homework. I was trying to work on that. I have a question how to work with eggs. Like if a recipe only calls for yolks, how do I work with that? And also when the eggs are, how do I price an egg in grams?
Okay, so here comes the kicker. A standardized eggs weigh 2 ounces, okay, which is about 55 grams. It's actually pretty close to that, okay? An egg over here is I mean, I know that an ounce is help me out. An ounce is 24 grams, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so two ounces, of course, 48 grams. An egg weighs about 50 grams, 52 grams in Europe, okay? So out of that, in general, an egg is 60% white and 40% yolk. Okay, so if you think of that, that should make it easier.
Another thing, 10 whites equal 300 grams. So
yeah,
it's 30 grams the white.
Yeah. All right, so guys, for this week, there is a discussion forum, and it's all about organization. I mentioned that as well last week, okay? So this is all about how do you personally stay organized, okay? This can be personally, how do you stay organized? How do you stay organized through your work? What means and what techniques do you use, okay? So this can be in all facets of your life, budget, schoolwork, or anything else, right? You obviously keep organized with your homework and your schoolwork, etc. too, right? The key here is to figure out how would some of these skills be useful for you in your professional life, okay? And then I will tell you that my sort of postscriptum bottom line on that one is that if you are working with anything that needs to be shared or updated a lot, I strongly recommend at that case that you go through some kind of mobile electronic device in order to do that. If it is just yourself and you do a daily planner and you don't miss anything and it works well with how you pay bills every month and et cetera, then in that case, that's fine as long as you don't have to share it, okay? So I'm not telling you what you need to use. I'm just telling you, tell me what you're using, how would you apply it, and what would you do if you were in a professional setting? What would you maybe do a little bit different? How would you adjust stuff for that setting, okay? That's the discussion forum for this week, all right? Now, for the assignment this week, there is that costing sheet that's online that you need to download. On the first, I'm going to share my screen with you guys real quick, okay? So there is a recipe here down here on tab 1, asparagus, beets, potatoes, etc. Now, the reason that I have put this recipe on here is primarily for pastry students, because the thing is that most of the produce that you use, and this is next week's assignment, is going to be the yield percentages. When you're doing baked goods, unless you're throwing something out, it's going to be 100% yield. So if you're making a pie crust, for example, and you use flour, you use sugar, you use butter, a little bit of salt in there, all that you don't throw anything out. You're not peeling flour, right? So therefore, your yield percentage is going to be 100% every single time. The only time a bakery will have a yield percentage that's different than 100 is, for example, if you're making an apple pie from scratch. You're peeling apples, right? That means now there's a shell, there's a core, you're going to throw that out. Then you're going to have a yield percentage adjustment. Otherwise, if you don't throw anything out, if you make a cherry pie and you buy canned cherries, for example, or frozen cherries, you're not throwing anything out. So then everything is 100%. So in order to just get acclimatized with what a yield percentage is, that's why we have added this recipe in the front here. If you guys are already using recipes that have yield percentages, basically onions, carrots, something where you're going to have something that you're going to peel or you're going to throw in your garbage can, right? Then you can take this recipe one and erase it and throw it out and put one of your recipes instead. All right. This is just here. If your recipes are baked goods primarily or beverages and you don't have anything you waste, then I encourage you guys to do this exercise. If you're already doing exercises, recipes where you do have a yield percentage, that's going to be basically you're going to peel something or have some kind of waste, then you don't have to do this. You can take these out and put your own recipe instead. Does that make sense? It's just so that people that otherwise might not be exposed to what we call yield percentage, and I know it's next week, but I got to tell you this week about it, so you get in and do that exercise. So for this week, simply what you need to do here is write your name, the recipe name, whatever it is, chicken Alfredo, hamburgers, cheeseburgers, meatloaf, whatever the heck it is, you put the name in there. This is costed by, hopefully, you. Otherwise, you're going to have some trouble, right? Then down here, I want you guys to put a long list of ingredients. Whatever ingredients go in that recipe that you've chosen. The recipe, of course, I recommend that you go off your menu that you did in CE165, unless you've decided that, you know what, that menu is not what I want to do anymore. I want to do something different, okay? Then in here, it doesn't matter what it is. You put the name on top. You made it. You put the ingredients list right here. All right? Now comes the kicker. The weight column. This column here is anything you buy per pound or in weight in any way, shape, or form. Okay? If you buy it by weight, you put the amount that you need for your recipe in the weight column. Volume column will be anything you can pour. Chicken stock, olive oil, pastry guys, vanilla extract,
milk,
molasses, milk, thank you, cream, you just opened up the whole box of Pandora for me, thank you. So anything you can pour goes in the volume, all right? And then last but not least is each. So each would be eggs. If you buy lemon by the each and you have the price for one lemon, you can put lemons in there. Avocados. Usually if you buy the long, the hot house cucumbers, they're usually sold by the each, or at least there's always the same count of cucumbers in a case. Then you can use them by the each, okay? If you buy jalapenos in a bag, let's say a 1 pound bag of jalapenos, please do not put jalapenos in count, right? That's going to go over in the weight column, all right? Does that make sense? Okay. Now unit. Unit here will be, if you're buying something in weight, it will be probably gram, ounces, or pounds. If you buy something by volume, it'll probably be by fluid ounces, pint, quart, liter, gallon. Okay? If you buy it by the count, by the count, it will probably be piece or each. All right. Now, what happens here is when you put the unit in here, you will notice that it fills out the unit in the two other boxes. It does that automatically for you. All right. So let's say here, asparagus here, right? Let's say I need 6 ounces, right? 6 ounces of asparagus. How much does asparagus cost? You guys have any idea? No? Let's go up and see here. Let's see what we can find. So we have here, these are purple, that might be a little bit. So let's see at Walmart, what are they selling? Per pound, $29.39. I guess we're not going to buy asparagus at Walmart, huh? Do you have a price for asparagus, Mark?
I will give you. Wait a minute. Hey, now where it is.
So here we got. So these are actually sold by the piece, believe it or not, but there's 25 in a pack. So that's fairly unusual way of doing it. Let's see.
Where is the asparagus? Asparagus. Yeah, because now I have. Where is this?
We can buy asparagus by the metric ton.
No, I don't think so.
What do you have for us, Mark? And this is on that list.
Asparagus, it's I will say 29.27 per pound.
Oh, it's expensive, huh? All right. So down here, guys, you see here we have enterprise per pound. So what did you say, 29.20?
Yeah, 29.20. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're not eating much asparagus late. I'll tell you that. So
no, but it's probably no. It was it was.
But
by memory, it was 5 pounder for this. So it was free. No, it was $6 per pound.
Okay, that makes more sense. So $6 per pound. So you see here, if I enter the price per pound here in this little cell here, it'll tell me 38 ounces per 38 cent per ounce, right? So that's the price I'm going to put in here, 0.38. All right. So all you got to do here is put in your per pound price down here, and it'll give you it'll come up with the price per ounce. This is sort of a little calculator for you. And since a quart is 32 ounces, so if I put in my, let's say $6 a quart, it'll come out to $19 per fluid ounce. Okay, so you can use this little tool down here to help you if you are using things that you buy per pound or per quart. Then this will do the conversions for you.
For the beets, for example, they will find it was a bag of 10 pounder. The beets will be the red loose would be 22.50 10 pounds.
Okay, so 22.50. So that'll be 225, right? So that'll be your 14 ounce per ounce. Okay, so then if you needed 4 ounces of those, then we have make sure you put in the units. Okay, and then it'll do everything here. All right. So this is a little bit of putting in your ingredients that you need, putting in the quantities in the right column. So lime juice, for example, would be here, right? Atlantic salmon, all these things here, everything else will go in your weight column, okay? Because there is no eggs. For example, if I had eggs or anything else that we buy by the each, then I would put here, like for example, eggs here, right? I would put 2 eggs, for example, right? Each at an egg costs about 22 cents each, and that will give me the price this way. All right. So for you guys, so to answer your question earlier about the egg whites or the egg yolks. If you buy the eggs whole, right, then if I use here eggs, whole eggs, but I only want the yolk out of them, for example, right? And I told you guys that yolk is 40%. That then this basically means that the yolk ends up costing that much. All right. So if you were using egg whites, then you just put 60% in there. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is one way to do it.
So how about when, like, if my recipe calls for 75 grams of egg, how do I put that in there? Do I put it?
Are we going to talk about egg whites or egg yolks or just
the whole egg? But I need 75 grams of egg.
Do this here. Then just say here an egg weighs, let's say here, right? 50 grams each, right? Okay. Sorry. Because we know that's what an egg weighs. You go in your fridge, take an egg, put it on your scale, figure out how much an egg weighs.
The whole is around 70 grams.
Okay, so that should be a little bit less than that actually, right? So if you need 60 grams of eggs, right, that needs of whole egg, that means you need 1.2 egg, right? So you might have to take out your calculator and figure out. So you take your 70 grams. So how many grams did you say you needed?
Like 75. Yeah.
Okay.
Typically, my eggs are 48 grams without once I take it out of the shell.
Yeah. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your 75 gram divided by 50 grams, and that'll be 1.5.
Okay.
Okay, and then that's what you're going to put in here, 1.5 each, and then you're going to put the price of the egg, and then here you're going to leave this at 100 if you use the whole egg. All right?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Next week we're going to talk about, of course, the portion cost, the suggested menu price. We're going to talk about the food cost, and then the yield percentage. The yield percentage, all these answers are in week 3 under the assignment. Everything is mentioned there. So don't worry about that too much, okay? So this week, what you need to do is put in your ingredients, how much you need in the right column. Make sure you put the unit of what you need, and then find how much you pay per pound. If you don't know how much it is, guys, write yourself a little shopping list, go to your grocery store, and go in your house and find the prices, okay? You can find a lot of prices online on Amazon, et cetera, but truthfully, what you really want to know is how much does it cost now for me if I'm making this? And that's the best way to do it. Just make yourself a list and then go to your store and get the prices. Does that make sense?
Yes, I have a question.
Yep.
Following with the eggs, and I'm sorry to go again, but
No, that's fine.
it is 1.5 eggs. So what should you do? Like, you scramble it first and then you go like by the weight, or like how do you cut an egg?
There's a difference between costing and making a recipe. Right now we're talking about the costing. If you were indeed to use 1.5 egg in a recipe, yes, you'd break 1 egg, you'll beat it, and then you'll use half of it and then mix it with a whole egg.
Okay.
That's how you would usually do that. That's how we usually do it. Yeah.
Yeah, because not it will be a loss.
Or you double your recipe and then you don't have any half eggs. You're going to use 3 eggs. That makes sense? Well, trust me, I've done a lot of recipes where they come out in one quantity. Like if I'm making ranch dressing or something, right? I don't want a half a jug of heavy cream, a half a tub of sour cream, and then an open pack of something else, right? Of mayonnaise. I'm going to make sure that the quantities that I get in, boom, that's it. So if that means I need to make the recipe 2.54 times in order to fill out my whole container, those are adjustments that you make afterwards when you make them. Does that make sense? Like if you guys are baking, you very well know that when you're assembling cakes, there's nothing better than to use frozen sponge cake, right? when you're going to make a cake. When you're putting it together and stacking it, right? You like to have that sponge frozen. So if your recipe tells you to make three in a professional environment, you might be making 30 of them and then store them in the freezer, right? So then you're going to save time because it takes less time to make 30 in one batch than it does to make 10 times 3.
Yeah. Don't tell that to Chef Anne that you suggested to frozen the.
I didn't say anything, but I've worked in the industry for 32 years, okay? I've seen it, and I've done it. That makes sense? Okay, what stays in CE165, okay, what happens here stays here, guys.
I have one last question. Do I assume the milk, 1 ml of milk is equal 1 gram?
Yep.
Okay.
1,000th of a liter, right, is 1 gram. Yeah.
Okay.
So guys, real quick, because I'm actually late for the next live session that starts in 8 minutes. So let me just go through this real quick. Next week, discussion forum is converting your restaurant, right? We're talking about if you're a bakery, how would you make it into a food truck? If you're a food truck, how do you make it into a restaurant? Catering, back and forth, and this and that. That's a discussion for next week. And of course, the second part of costing the recipes, right? That's all the stuff that you're not doing this week. That'll be next week's assignment. You're going to have a lot of fun with next week's assignment. I guarantee you. If you play around with the food cost and all that stuff, you'll notice some really cool tools in that template. All right? Any questions, guys? Excellent. I will see you next week. I really appreciate all you guys' hard work and efforts, and thank you for participating in the live session. It makes it so much more fun. All right? See you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
See you guys. Bye.
I do